welcome to my cellar. And speaking of cellars, I have come up with something for you wonderful Patreon people. I'm going to conduct a tour of my basement using my phone. Give it that gritty documentary film noir look. But seriously, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to, this week, I'll be doing different lighting and that just so you can see down here. And then the Patreon people will get a link. So, all right. Now, I don't know. There must have been a rumor that I was sick or something. First couple of comments were a little unsettling. Your contribution to gaming enjoyment of millions will never be forgotten. Thank you. Well, thank you. As someone who has experienced and loved D&D and all that it inspired since the 70s, thank you. Again, you're welcome. Thank you. And once more, thank you for being part of making such a great thing that survives today and will long into the future. And again, you're welcome. I had a good time doing it, without a doubt. Amazing you got to have that experience when your wife brought home the stamps. It was a treat to hear you speak on this in the Blue Sky sessions so emotionally. I think someone in my house is cutting onions. Congrats, Mr. Cass, and thank you for contributions to this amazing game. We'll love to hear about some more of those Blue Sky sessions. Sounds like a great time. Okay. We talked about a lot of different things. Usually they usually started with something that was going on at the time, a production issue or something of that nature. But then when we got that solved, we go, oh yeah, okay, we got a few minutes. All right, what do you want to talk about? And some days it would be nothing more exciting than the leaves on the trees outside the windows, and wondering, what it was like to be that robin sitting on the branch up there, or because we're fantasists and we're thinking about it. And then of course there were the times about wouldn't it be nice if the game did this, the game did that. Okay. I remember one particular, because we were doing print runs of around 3,000 to 5,000 at a time, depending upon what it was. And we said something about I'd have to get a quote from one of our printers for a run on 20,000 and see what that would drop the unit cost to. And we looked at each other and go, yeah, okay, right. I'll get right on that. We floated various ideas. I told him that, I got upset one day. SPI used to think they were a board game company. For those of you who are too young to know or don't know about them, they were a board game company, and they thought they were pretty hot shit. And they did strategy and tactics magazines 6 times a year, and there was a game inside each one. And they put out some pretty good games, simulation games, war games, you would say. And then every once in a while they did the occasional bow wow wow. It was a dog. And they thought that they were pretty hot shit. And of course we were fantasy. And we would often wonder, who do they think they are? We're selling as many as what we're doing, and they would try to do a fantasy game, and it would suck. And we would snipe at the other companies to each other based on how they treated us, or the last time one of us had dealings with them or whatever. And we actually posited one day that, if we got really big like they're afraid, who could we buy? And guess who came up? And as luck would have it, years later, they borrowed a lot of money from TSR, couldn't pay it back, and TSR ended up owning SPI. And they had some good games, and they had some bad games, and TSR tried screwing around with a couple of them and screwed them up. But anyway, that was a particular one that became true. Scaling strength is interesting. Well, thank you. I'm glad you think so. I thought so. I like what you. I like what you're saying here. Put it numbers so everyone feels it's fair. The first thing that springs to mind is raising or lowering the functional strength score by 6 per size class, so that an 18 strength Noah would roll as having 12 strength against a medium creature and 6 against a large one. Well, okay, that's a good rule of thumb as any. However, even a mouse with an 18 strength, I don't think would be a 6 against a human, because if that were the case, mice would trip us more often. You know, they'd dart out at night and trip us and hope we'd fall down and split our heads so they could lick our blood. You got to watch those mice. But that's a good rule. That's as good a rule as I can think of off the top of my head as a way to scale it. The damage versus size thing was so that a tiny creature, a 2-foot creature with a 9-inch sword, was not likely to kill or even strike that giant-sized thing anywhere where it's going to hurt it. And it gets a little hairy when you start getting in how big is this, how big is that, you know. But there's a logic to it. Sometimes it's a little strange to find, but when you do look long enough, you'll find it. At one point, probably 35 to 40 years ago now, I decided I'd grown up and sold a lot of my treasures, including my copy of Chainmail White Box First Edition with all the expansions and a Dragon #1. You sold your Dragon #1? I did keep my set of the strategic reviews with my name and address on the mailing levels to prove that I was there at the start. Well, that's as good a one as you can prove you were there at the start. They are kind of the predecessor of everything. Well, not necessarily D&D, but they are certainly the predecessor stage of publishing by TSR, and I was able to spin them off into a couple of other magazines. Anyway, don't know why D&D just clicked with me from the get-go. Sometimes I wish I had the same reaction to Magic the Gathering. I'd sell all those original cards and buy my kids a house. Well, only if they were in pristine condition. But yes, it's a good point, well made. Yes. All right, next question. You don't just deserve to feel good about those stamps coming out. You deserve to feel over-chuffed. Well, there's a British chuffed. I like that word. Congrats. You made a big difference to the world, many lives, including all of us here in the comments. Thank you. Yeah, I know. And I look back, and oh man, something's been eating at the corner of my eye. Oh, evening. Speaking of which, I just thought of something. Oh, I've been having a good time all day today and yesterday. I need to renew my passport because I'm going to Canada and Alaska in May. And I went online, did it all, paid my money and everything, and then it wouldn't accept my photograph. It told me it couldn't find my head. So I tried 2 or 3 different ones, still couldn't find my head. So I ended up having to go to Walgreens and pay $18 for a lady to take my picture with an electronic camera and then put it in her Wizbo machine, which enables her to manipulate the image to get it. Boop, oh, they'll take it. So anyway, if there's anybody that watches this that's in Canada or knows of a really great game store in Canada, I know we're going to Ketchikan, and I'll give you when I know the list. I'll give you a list of the cities we're going to be stopping at, and we're going up on a smaller boat, not a floating city, more like a floating village, and I'm looking forward to day trips ashore. And if there's a game store at any of the places we stop, you can bet I will be there, just to check it out and see how they game in the great frozen north. All right, regarding masking and COVID at Gen Con, I actually have a friend who had a very successful board game premiering at Gen Con, and she ended up getting quite sick from COVID and is currently still suffering as it evolved into pneumonia. Fun stuff. She's so mad because she's been pretty good about masking when it makes sense, and this is the first time she didn't, because she wanted to interface with people, signing games, take photos of fans, and all that. She also has fame because she was a bass player for the Runaways in the 70s and a 4-day Jeopardy champ. Well, that's the most impressive thing right there to me, is the 4-day Jeopardy champ. She's a brainiac. Her name is Jackie Fox, by the way. I've even played role-playing games with her in the past that she had GM'd. Anyway, she's an awesome person. I feel so bad she's been so sick for the Gen Con visit. I'm happy for the success of her board game. It's called Rock Hard in 1977, by the way, and it's about being in a rock band. Check it out. Well, while it might be interesting to look at, there's so many things I want to play. That's way down on the list, to be fair. But I am sorry. You know, when COVID first popped, I have a very crafty, handy sister who made me some marvelous masks. They're cloth, but and they're so they're not an N95 or a K95 or whatever, but they're cloth, and they do a pretty good job of cutting down. And I've got some with dragons on them, and I got some with mustaches on them, and some with pot leaves, and different things. And they were selling them, and so you make a point, unless you're afraid of being accused of virtue signaling. But if I went to that con, I'd been in one of my dragon masks. And, they're just regular masks. It's what's on the fabric or the painting or whatever. I'd have been in one and hoped I'd gotten photographed a bunch to remind people that they need to be careful. Now, I didn't mask a couple of Gary Cons ago and got hammered because we thought it was over. And I went to a spreader event. And I'm real sorry she got sick from it, and that should be a cautionary tale for us all. It's super cool and amazing that RPGs are popular. Now they're D&D stamps. It's hard to imagine, considering back in the days when it was hard to find a book. Gen Con's approaching 100,000 people. Our little regional cons in the 80s were the same 50 to 100 nerds in the same 50 to 100 nerds in the 80s. The nerds who were mocked by at least, and who often were accused of learning deviltry. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. It's funny. The Cincinnati gaming market is it's been volatile. When I first got here in the early 80s, I got involved with several other people, and we kind of put on some cons, and we had 3,000 and 4,000 attendants. We had one year where Avalon Hill came to run a tournament, and Nova Games came to run a Ace of Aces tournament. And if you ever around Jim Wampler, he'll tell you all about the time that snotty little kid shot me down in the tournament after I already had several kills. That was him. but I forgave him. But I mean, we used to have some big cons, and then, and this isn't my ego speaking, but, and then it became that we stepped aside, we being guys not quite my age, but several of the guys I board gamed with many, many years. We stepped aside to let the young guns who were clamoring for more autonomy and more control, and it went to hell in a handbasket within 3 years. There is still a Cincy Con that goes on every year. Unfortunately, it often runs on the same weekends as Gary Con, which is not very, not a lot of foresight, but it has a steady, more than 50 or 100, many more than 50 or 100. And I'm glad to see it because it is an outpost of gaming. And there was another one here last winter or the winter before called Fire and Ice, and I think there's going to be another one that I'll probably go and run a game at. Okay, anyway. However, there isn't anything I want to do with 70,000 other people. You're right, I don't either. They really need to think about making Gen Con 2 or 3 weekends or something with people only getting to buy a ticket for one weekend, or maybe 3 or 4 regional Gen Cons. You know, the regional Gen Cons thing was done in the past, and it worked for a while, and I wasn't with TSR when it died, so I don't really know the reasoning behind, or the causality behind it, but they tried that. 2 or 3 weekends, no, because which one's going to be the best weekend? And it's a tough problem, and I don't have any glib solutions for it. And this commenter goes on to say, regardless, we have internet now. I'm not really missing out. I can find all the news and products instantly, and I can play with people at local events. Do you attend anything locally soon? Well, it depends on what you mean by locally and soon. Right now, the only 2 conventions that I'm committed to going to is Wizard Con up in the Battle Creek area, well, not exactly Battle Creek, and Gary Con in Lake Geneva. One in March and one in July, I think. We are. I gotta look that up. Don't hold me to it. Go to Wizard Tower Games and it'll be there, and they'll tell you when it is. And I'm going to those. There are no others on my plate at the moment. But you know, if I'm on this cruise for 7 days and I find a bunch of D&Ders on board, I'll bet we get a game up. Yeah, screw the whales. We're fighting trolls. No, who knows? I'm always up for a game. I'm up for a lot of games. Oh, P.S. I was looking for something else, and I spied a wood cigar box in the craft section at Wally Martinez. Is that a real store? 2 jumped into my cart. You were right, of course. It has the most satisfying sound when I throw my math rocks in it. Yeah, there's something. It's true old school. Wood box. Wood ball sets bouncing off them, ting, 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 ting. It's almost like a wooden wood chime. There's great plastic ones. I have a beautiful one that's shaped like a nautilus. But that tink, tink, tink in the wood, there's something about that sound. Let's see. I agree with you all the way. All the way. You need. To, as a DM, look at other systems. Yes, you should. You become hidebound if you stay on your own. I always made a point of looking at other systems to find things to cherry pick and plug into my games. Well, and see, I've been very fortunate. I've been asked to edit or first read some other systems. So I got to read them intricately and be compensated. Best of both worlds. Even way back when my original group was playing 4E. 4E, wow. I never knew anybody that played. I've never met anybody that's played 4E. Nice to meet you. I was stealing elements from Pathfinder 5e and even games like Fantasy Flight, Star Wars RPG. Take what works is my style, and that's it. You know, when you look at it, role playing is the thievinest game there is. Everything we do is based on, at some point, theft of other people's ideas, or has a huge element of it. That's what we do. Now, back in the weird days when we were fighting cave bears to get to the game session, it was that was then. But the whole point was find an idea in a book somewhere and steal it. We published Appendix N so that you could see where we stole our ideas. See a movie, pick up a piece here, pick up something there. That's what fantasy gaming is like, a magnet that walks through the junk store. Different stuff sticks. Yeah, oh well, fantasy magnet in the junkyard, I guess. Anyway, you get the imagery. Sharp and dangerous. Anyway, whatever works is right. And if you see something somebody else is doing, you like a better way, adapt. Take it. You can lift anybody else's system whole cloth as long as you're not trying to make a profit on it. Hope you're well. Congrats on the stamps. I'm envious your postal service anyway, but this event just buffs that up times 10. Yes, you poor foreigners that have... When Americans bitch and moan about our postal system, they need to talk to some of you guys that don't live here. Jesus, don't try to mail anything into Canada. Phew. I think they got beavers running their post office. Question 1. How do wizards protect themselves from physical damage in your world? Assiduously and carefully. One of the best ways is to have a lot of meat shields. That's why they call them meat shields, so the wizards live. They don't always appreciate that, either being called a meat shield or catching arrows, but, that's the way it is. I've come across games where certain spells grant the wizard magical protection, like a force field, or a more limited form of protection, like an arcane shield used like a normal shield. In the David Lynch Dune movie, the House Atreides warriors use a force field that can only deflect fast-paced attacks, but a slow, stealthy stab will slip by. Okay. Again, you like that in Dune? Take it. There are spells that tend to be rigid, like a wall of force between the caster and whatever's out there. There is, well-crafted leather armor, bracers, girdles, things like this that can legally jack up a magic user's defense and capabilities on offense. It's not easy. It's not easy being a magic user. Certainly not easy becoming a magic user of many levels. Question 2. Should magical protection have weak spots or exploits, as they're called in video games? No. Counters, yes. If a protection spell relies on a certain type of magic, and somebody comes up with something of a different type of magic that counters it or nullifies it or at least negates it, neutralizes it. But no, magical protection should be magical protection. It can be overpowered by other magic, particularly magic designed to overpower it. But other than that, no. I don't believe so. Your mileage may vary. What would you suggest are some things to keep in mind when designing magical protections from physical damage? Thanks for all your efforts and great work on RPGs. Special thanks for this forum in which we can interact with you and you with us. Now, there was a comment right here on this one. Before you start getting fancy with the rings and cloaks of protection, plus the extra hit points that come from with a familiar, remember that your cheapest and best option is always to have lots of meat shields in front of you and to stay behind them. That's how you play a character that is basically a glass cannon. Good advice. I had once a magic user that got up to be quite powerful and potent, and once out of 7 or 8 that I started over the years, they all met their demise, but the one. Magic users need to be clever, crafty. They need to glean every bit of extraneous protection they can get. Amulets, bracers, girdles, boots of fast, getaway speed. Magic users cannot do anything but live by the axiom that it's a smart adventurer that lives to fight another day. That's the way it must be if you're going to play a magic user. Yeah, unless if you're going to play one fairly. Let's put it that way. Okay. Now I'm going to diverge a little. Still in gaming. Wouldn't dream of going any further out of field than that. But if you want to go back a few months, and I'm not going to make this a big I told you so, but it looks like my worst fears have come true, and that D&D is going to become a video game filled with microtransactions. And it's going to cost you money to play the game beyond the initial, it costs us money to be D&Ders. We buy the books, we buy the dice, but once we buy the books and the dice, that's it. We don't have to keep buying crap if we don't want to. Doesn't look like that's the way it's going to be now. The Hasbro is going to turn it into a video game, like, you keep buying. If you got enough money, you can become very potent, very powerful, very well protected. It'll ruin the game. There's a video, an MMORPG that Jolly spoofs in the Knights of the Dinner Table. And I can't help but see a lot of his spoofs lapping over into real life now. I don't know what crystal ball you were using, Jolly, but that was pretty prescient. Pretty prescient. Microtransactions. Wonderful. That's called nickel diming you to death. It's always, sure, a couple of bucks. Oh, sure, a couple of bucks. Oh, sure, a couple of bucks. And pretty soon you've spent the equivalent of a whole new hardbound book. What do you have? Bunch of pixels. Nope, not me. Now, there's a meme going around about J.D. Vance when he was 13 and playing Magic the Gathering and his problems with girls. It wasn't the game. It was you. If you've always looked scruffy like you do now, it was certainly you. All right. I don't generally get political, but That's not so much politics as personal douchebag. What else? I think that's it. I can't think of anything else. There's no great movies coming out anytime soon that I'm aware of. Gen Con's come and gone, and I still don't have a good handle on anything new and wonderful and exciting that came out there. There may be, I just haven't heard it yet. Any of you who went that got some great brand new game that fits into what we do here, well, you can always let us know in the comments. And if it sounds intriguing enough, I may go look it up myself. Don't have anything else going. Go to wizardtowergames.com and find out when the con is next spring or summer. And I'm trying to remember right now, and I can't. Don will kill me. I'll be at Gary Con. I'm going to go to Alaska in May. So if there's any Alaskans that want to, I'll give you the list of I'll give you my itinerary next week, and we'll see if anything is pans out, is doable. And I guess until that time, next week that is, Dodada Gobi. Hello, and welcome to my Cellar.
The Curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the Curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's the Curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the Curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. DSR and fantasy, collection of micro armory, Titan with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the Curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the Curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the Curmudgeon in the cellar.